Hey, welcome back to GuitarCast. I'm Andy Keithley, and this is a special Phish Tour Report episode with my longtime friend, Joe Polise. Joe was on the GuitarCast episode 31 back in 2018, and he was happy to sit down with me in Vegas and talk about 4.0 Phish and this year's Halloween run. So, welcome back, Joe Po. Joe Polise returns to the GuitarCast.
We're back.
We are in Vegas.
We're in the city. What is? I don't even know. Like Los Angeles is the city of angels, but I don't know what Las Vegas means. City of crazy. I mean, I almost moved here. If you
really?
Yeah. I remember. I was in Kansas City working. And I remembered it was like an article or something, and it was about how Vegas is it's cheap to live in.
Interesting.
At least back then. I think it's getting more expensive now, but they pay their teachers really well.
Oh yeah.
And cost of living is low. It's so easy to get in and out of Vegas via an airplane.
True.
But it was one of those things, I just thought about it. I'm like, that'd be an interesting place to live for a bit, but I just decided not to.
And now you're in
Colorado.
Breckenridge. Not a bad alternative.
No, and, I wanted to learn how to ski and be in cold weather all the time, so that's where I'm at. So, but yeah, it's life is good, and since the last time we've talked, a lot has changed with the world. And
that was a while ago.
It was 2018, Summer Tour 2018, at the end of the West Coast leg. And then, we did a lot of shows in 2019. 2019 was a really good year. And then, these are kind of the residuals of 2020 that should have been.
And you've been on a lot of this year's tour.
Yeah, so I was fortunate, we did Arkansas at the last minute. That was it was a close show to Kansas City, and so a lot of the KC crew went, and we made it work, flew in, flew out, and then went to Nashville for 2 nights, and then we did Deer Creek, and then we did Dick's, and then we did San Francisco, LA, and Vegas. And we're here.
Yeah, and I picked up with you in San Francisco and have been to a number of shows since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just an embarrassment of riches at this point.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree? All the shows have been stellar.
So I often I'll call my brother and I'll say the phrase oh man, every year. Every show, if I'm on tour, he'll be like, how is it? I'm like, oh man, they're firing on all cylinders. And I always say that. And at this point, it begs the question, are there any cylinders left?
Yeah.
And can it... it's such a... the band has changed so much over their career and their sound and what they play, how they play, and it's, I think of the golden years to me, my favorite era of Phish was late 90s, the 97 through 2000 era is what I really like to listen to.
Agree. I find though, since I guess the first shows in 2021, 4.0,
right,
that I'm listening to all recent 4.0 shows. I haven't listened to an old show in a long time. I think during the pandemic era, lockdown, I was listening to a ton of old 97 through 99. And
do you listen to tapes or do you listen to...
I have most of the live Phish catalog in MP3 form. I've just recently got the live Phish app, so I've been listening on there. Yeah. I do prefer a soundboard recording. Occasionally I'll listen to an audience recording just if there's a big audience reaction to a song or something like that.
I go down the rabbit hole. Every now and then somebody will mention a show and I'll be like, that's interesting. Or I'll see there's a Instagram thing, it's this day in Phish history. And I'll be like, that looks like an interesting show. Let me listen to that. And so I'll go on the re-listen app and check out the audio. I did start I can't remember, it was at some point during 2020, during not necessarily lockdown, but I was just kind of working from home, and I started re-listening to all of summer of 1999.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
And I feel like that's a kind of like a forgotten, like often overlooked year of Phish. They toured so heavy in that year.
Yeah.
The summer tour was interesting. You know, they started in KC and then they went down through the South and then up the East Coast and then back towards the Midwest and finished at Deer Creek. And I'm just like at like Alpine. I still haven't like finished like the whole thing. But there's just, you know, every era, every year has its own unique sound. And I can pinpoint with a fair amount of accuracy, if a show is coming on, I'm like, is this, like, I'll know if it's late 90s. And I'll know if it's like, you know, the difference in sound from like 95, 96 to 97 is pretty, they changed. Like the band changed a lot in what they were doing. And I can tell if something is from 2.0 and 03, 04. And then I can also, you know, but then like once they came back in 09, it's hard for me to like really distinguish their sound from one year to the next. Like if something comes on and it's from 2013, I can't distinguish that from like 2016, 2017 type stuff. It kind of depends, but I just feel like we're at a new era of playing.
They sound now, you know, they're going into really deep type 2 improv jams every night.
Right.
A lot of the same effects are coming up, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, every show has got like a pretty stellar couple of jams.
Yeah.
Not just one big one.
Right. And they jam things out that like they don't normally, you know, improv to. And that's what's unique. And I'm loving it. Like really loving it. As they say in Mrs. Doubtfire, every night is like the Bay of Pigs.
Yeah, so, and you're a math teacher. And a math enthusiast. So what did you think about last night's numbers and math show?
As somebody who follows patterns for a living, I did not recognize the pattern that happened last night. It dawned on me. I mean, you said it at set break. You're like, every song has a number, and I'm like, oh. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't realize that.
Well, I thought about this because when you're at the show, it's a little bit harder to think of the set list in those terms.
Right.
When you're on Twitter or you're watching the webcast, you're just like, all you're doing is looking at the set list as it comes out. So people online noticed it immediately, whereas it took halfway through the set or longer for me to be like, oh, numbers, interesting. And then somebody pointed out, they're going down, and what does it all mean? And
well, and that's what, I mean, the thing of it is like, when you think of what the band is doing when they're on tour, they are sitting around in the backstage of that arena talking. And when they came out, when Trey did that documentary that's on Amazon or whatever it is, that was such a good portrayal of insight information as
he's listing out all the songs.
Well, not even that. It's just like the guy is sitting there and he's like, they're so creative. These four guys are so creative. They're creative as a unit. They sit around and they just talk. And they've talked about it on a lot of podcasts, and it's like all these ideas that they have, all these events and things that they do at the show come out of these dumb ideas because they're four best friends locked in a room talking to each other.
One example is the Baker's Dozen, the whole concept of the Baker's Dozen.
And do you know where that came from?
The Boston cream joke of...
Well, yeah. But it was October 22nd, 2010 at the Dunkin' Donuts Arena. And it was the Providence Civic Center. And they changed it to Dunkin' Donuts. And I think Fishman came up with like, now that it's a donut theme, we should do like
donut night,
a dozen shows, or that we should do like a don't. That's how the idea came about, and it was the Boston Cream. And then they were like, and they were just joking around. Mm-hmm. And they were like, what if you meshed up Boston and Cream into a song, and you did like I forget what the name of the song is from that show.
More Than a Feeling?
Well, it's more than
The Sunshine of Your Love.
The Sunshine of Your Feeling.
Of Your Feeling,
yeah,
right.
They like created that, and that's ultimately where the idea started, and then they just have these ideas and they just go.
They just run with it.
You know, the funny thing is, as a teacher, you know, there's this concept of it's called project-based learning, or like a way to like solve certain problems, and you take this approach of like, you know, their ultimate question, in my opinion, that they're asking themselves is, what if we did this? And then they go through the problem-solving thing, and it's like, okay, how do we make that a reality? Mm-hmm. Could we do that? Like, is that something we could do? And they just sit around, and they're just, it's all just a
punctuated with, wouldn't that be funny if...
Right. And then they're like, wait, that we could do that.
Let's just do it.
Why not?
Another example is the long set at Big Cypress.
Right.
They talked about it for years. What would it be like if we just played for a very long time?
Right.
And so they took them years to think it out, flesh it out, and they had the opportunity and they went for it.
Yeah. And so I think we're, you know, I've never heard of the Numbers show. Have you heard of I mean, apparently people have said that there's going to be like an animal.
I've thought about that. Even dogs, specifically dogs only, you could get a whole set at least out of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, an animal show is obvious.
And that's the one where I'm like, well, if each night, I mean, that's the thing is like, have they been waiting to do Vegas and like, okay, these 4 nights we're gonna do like these theme nights.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting. Halloween is my absolute favorite Phish.
Yeah, I agree.
Experience. I really try not to miss it.
Better than New Year's, you think?
Yeah, just, you know, New Year's is great and it's cool. I love New Year's, don't get me wrong. And you're in New York, you know, if you're at the Garden and you go to New Year's, it's just it's a hard ticket.
Yeah.
It is, and it's really fun. It's very theatrical and it's really cool and it's a spectacle. But Phish covering an album or doing like either writing something or writing an album, or that's where you see the ultimate creativity, in my opinion, along with just their raw talent.
Yeah.
But it's such a cool concept. Other bands try to like kind of emulate it and try to do stuff, but they just don't. You know, like
it's not the same. Maybe that's because we're huge Phish fans.
True.
But the surprise element is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And
like other bands will do covers.
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, Widespread Panic will do like, and they'll play some, you know, crazy covers. Songs that you would not expect them to play. You know, they'll do like Michael Jackson. But they'll just do a one-off, you know, and it's kind of in the middle of a set. I don't know if Panic does 3 sets on Halloween. I think it's just 2. You know, I don't even know what My Morning Jacket does. You know, both those bands are playing in New Orleans this weekend.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so I don't know. You know, I think Panic will be a standard Panic show with a bunch, and they dress up and stuff like that. But I don't know what the Jacket does, and those are, you know, my other like bands that I like in my formative years have gotten into. But yeah, Halloween's so cool. So what do you think they're gonna do for that second set on Halloween?
I think it's a fool's errand to try and predict what Phish is going to do any night, but certainly for Halloween, it's fun to kind of speculate a little bit. There are certainly albums that I would like to see Phish perform. Number one, you know this, is Harry Nilsson Schmilsson. I just have, ever since I heard that album for the first time, thought, man, this would be a perfect Phish record.
Yeah. Is that what you, like, in a perfect world, if you could choose what they are going to play, what would you want?
You know, Led Zeppelin 1 also, I think, would be a perfect fit. It's kind of on the nose. It's a little bit obvious. And they've played a few songs off of that record, I think, in the past. But, yeah, you know, it's like in the years that So I think 3 times they've done something that is not a traditional cover album. So when they did Wingsuit, when they did Kazvat Voxed, when they did Chilling Thrilling, which is one of my favorite Halloweens, but I love Chilling Thrilling.
Yeah.
I would prefer that they don't do that again this year. I mean, it's a cool thing, and it seems like they have a lot of fun writing new material for these things.
Right.
Personally, I really just want to see an album, one that I know or one that I've never heard of before.
Right.
That I can get into and see what they do with it.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that during this time, I spend my time, this year not so much, I've just been super busy, but trying to, if people are, you're on the internet, people are talking about albums, and you're like, oh crap, I haven't listened to, I just don't know that much Zappa. Mm-hmm. It's just not part of, I want to get into it. I know it's going to be a rabbit hole, so I'm kind of hesitant to, and I want to listen to more Zappa, and so that's something where if Phish did say Zappa, I would be like, okay, cool, bring it on, but I just don't know, I'm not going to know it.
Yeah.
And that's where it's I get nervous about Halloween. I get anxious about it because I'm like, I need to know these albums.
It's fun when you know it.
Yeah, and I remember in 2016, they did Ziggy Stardust, and that was an album that I really didn't know.
Really? But hadn't you heard a lot of those songs? I mean,
yeah, I had heard Starman, I'd heard Moon Age Daydream, but it wasn't something that I like when they did, oh gosh, what's the song? The part where, the Wham Bam, Thank You Ma'am, I forget what song that is on the album. I've listened to the album a bunch of times after, and I love that album. It's turned into one of my favorite albums. But when you're there and every single person knows the song and they know the cue, and you're standing there and you're like, crap, I wish I knew this. I wish that I was clued in, and I'm just not. And that's where I want it to be an album I know and that I love.
Yeah.
But
that's why for me, Zepp 1, as soon as they start Good Times, Bad Times, I personally would be like, we're in for an hour of just
rock and roll.
What I want to, I know every second on that record. I grew up with it.
Right.
So that's where but if we're going to go down Andy's personal list.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last night, by the way, that Hendrix song, If 6 Were 9, that was in E flat. He got his Koa 2, which was detuned to E flat, which is how Hendrix played always.
Really? I didn't know it was always.
Yeah, that was just his thing, and it's not uncommon. A lot of bands will do that because a lot of people's vocal register is better, just slightly lower down in E flat. It loosens the tension on the strings, and it's a subtle difference in playing. But I thought that was a good touch because they could have done that song in E, and he would on the same guitar.
Right.
It would have sounded just the same, except for a half step, higher.
Right.
But the fact that he put the guitar there, picked it up for that song, they played it in E flat, and then he got his other guitar back on. Just what a beautiful attention to detail.
Yeah.
Just what a chef's kiss.
Right. That's the professionalism that we're looking for. That's what we pay money to see. It's little things. What do you think of his new guitar, the 4.0 guitar?
I mean, hey, he seems to like it, and he seems to be playing really well on it.
Yeah.
No complaints.
Yeah.
I love it.
What are you noticing about the new guitar different from old guitars?
Well, he's always been able to get a really good long note and a good sustain. I mean, he's been doing that a lot. Not just in You Enjoy Myself, where there's always that long note. Which, by the way, at the Forum, during that note, he wasn't able to hold it the whole time. If you go back and listen.
I don't know if
Yeah, he wasn't able to keep it going, but he's been doing that note in other songs throughout the tour, where he's just bends a note and just holds it there, and of course the crowd goes wild.
Yeah,
it's a big thing.
It reminds me of the scene in Spinal Tap, where Nigel Tufnell says, "Can you hear the sustain on this is wicked?" You know the. He goes, you can hear the sustain. Already.
I don't hear anything.
He's like, you would if you...
if it were playing.
If it were playing. Well, can you play it? No, I'm not going to play it. He puts it down.
Dude, Spinal Tap, Smell the Glove. I'd love to hear Phish play that.
Oh my God.
Because that would be a perfect blend of comedy and rock, you know?
So...
And it's right up their alley.
Yeah. Oh my God, that would be...
Because that is an album, and all those songs are on there. Sex Farm Woman and Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You Tonight. Those songs are really good. They
are good songs. I want. Gosh,
Stonehenge. I mean, imagine the Stonehenge coming down.
I know, a little one too, like 18 inches tall.
Yeah, I mean, it'd just be too perfect.
That would be great. That really would be super super funny. Gosh, I mean, there's so many albums that I would love. I've heard, Physical Graffiti. Like, just on the internet, what I've been hearing is Physical Graffiti is one. I think, what I remember is that 2009, before Festival 8, and this is a story, I don't know if it's valid, but, they were killing an album every day.
Right, they had that big list of albums.
On my lunch break, I would go to Phish.com every single day, leading up to that, and going, what's happening?
Yeah.
And
that was great.
And it was great, and apparently somebody went through the, when on the code for that page, they had to show the rights of each of those album covers.
Interesting.
So if you went into the code, looked at that website on the code level, you saw each photo and the order in which it was being killed, apparently.
Oh, wow.
And somebody said, and I don't know if this is true, this is just something I read on the internet, so take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But the code said, and it was going down, all the way down, and then at the end, every album was being eliminated. And the last line of code on there was Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. Because it was the album that was not on the wall, and that was the one that was killing all of the other albums.
I gotcha.
And I mean, the rumors were swirling in '95 that they were going to do Thriller. That was a big thing. And I think the band started those rumors.
Yeah, they're good. I've
heard something recently where that's what they were doing. But they ended up and then they did Exile on Main Street. What was interesting about Exile on Main Street was the fact that year, I don't know if it was some anniversary or something, but that album was kind of all over the place. They did a remastered version of it, and I just don't know if somehow if they did that album with some sort of backing from the industry. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of turn, but they maybe, in my opinion, it just seemed like that whole year there was this big Exile on Main Street. They re-released the record. They did an anniversary edition or something like that, and it was all over the place. It was being advertised, and it was Phish did it. And I'm like, that's just it. Maybe it's a coincidence, but it just seemed too.
I remember that.
It just seemed. It seemed so It's interesting that they did that, and they're advertising the crap out of this album.
Yeah.
On every ad you're seeing was about that album. That's what I thought, but I could be completely wrong.
Yeah. Speaking of Festival 8 in Exile on Main Street, that was my last Halloween show that we both attended.
Yeah.
And which was 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
I missed my birthday show by one day because they did Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 30th, 31st, and November 1st.
Yeah, I flew in on your birthday.
So today will be my first birthday Phish show.
That's awesome.
In 18 years of seeing the band.
Yeah. Yeah, my birthday is a week from Saturday. A week from Saturday, and they're always... I mean, I think...
That's always the break, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless they, like, started the tour with Halloween and then toured through November. But, I think in 96, I think that was the last time my birthday was on November 6th that was played. But I look at Halloween as, like, this is my birthday present.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
I'm just going to go.
Me too. So, a little stat recap here. I saw my first Phish show March 1st, 2003, Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro.
Yeah.
And since then, up to last night in Vegas, I've seen 40 Phish shows.
Okay.
What was your first show, and how many have you seen since then?
My first show was September 25th, 2000. And it was in Bonner Springs, Kansas. The amphitheater was called Sandstone. It's a dump. Mm-hmm. I hate that place. But I had sentimental value there. And that's where we saw him in 2003 in the summer. And then last night was 191
nice
Phish shows. And so I'm not going to get to 200. I'll get to 200 next year, but we're doing this and we're doing Mexico, so I'll be at 198 after Mexico.
Solid numbers.
Yeah, so it's a little ridiculous, but at the same time, it's like, I had one of my teachers growing up. He was a big music guy, really into Eric Clapton and stuff, and I remembered, I forget I was back home from college or something like that, and we were like going out and getting a burger and stuff like that, and he's like, are you gonna go see Phish, or are you gonna go to shows? And I think I said, like, I don't know if I'm gonna go, just for whatever reason. And he goes, yeah, I skipped out on seeing Clapton and Stevie Ray Vaughan at Alpine Valley, and I didn't go because I'm like, oh, I'll just catch him next time they're around. And then Stevie Ray Vaughan dies.
Yeah.
And he had a buddy that was a big Deadhead, and he was like, yeah, I didn't go to Soldier Field in 95, because I'll just catch him the next time. Mm-hmm. And that was a very, hearing those stories, it really made me, he's like, man, you just go. If you have a means to go, you should go. He goes, you do you, but if this is your thing and you like to go see concerts and this is your favorite band, like, you should not be sitting it out.
That's why, that's exactly has been my attitude this year. I moved to Los Angeles in 2008, right when Phish got back together again. So like months after I moved to the West Coast, they start touring heavy on the East Coast and the Midwest. And for years, I could maybe catch 1 or 2 shows a year.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
There were years I didn't see any Phish shows. But this year, with the pandemic being what it was, and with this monster West Coast tour that they planned, I just made a point, like, I'm going to do as many shows as I can. I'm going to do, I'm going to make it to 10 shows this year, which is the most I've ever done in 1 year before. Yeah. And I don't regret that decision at all.
Right. Yeah. There are times I've been on tour, like, and I've gone on tour by myself. Like, I would ask, friends, I'd be like, hey, do you want to go? Can you go? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, I can go. I'm just going to go. And you just get in the car, and I would drive across the country. And, these long, like, 18-hour days, just crushing miles and driving across the country. And, like, I don't know, you do what you want to do when you want to do it. I remember being on tour in 2012, and I was with this guy, and it was just like I drove all the way from, like, I started in Cincinnati and ended at Alpine with my car, and my buddy drove my car back to Kansas City, and I flew to New York to do 2 shows at Jones Beach, 3 shows at SPAC, and those SPAC 2012 shows were awesome, by the way. That was really fun. And even Jones Beach, that was like the Tucking, like, tour, where, like, Fishmen, they were doing a Hold Your Head Up and a Vacuum thing, like, every night. It was so fun. But I just remember, like, that year, I remember being on someone else's clock, and they were having a really good time. They wanted to have more fun than I wanted to have, and it just wasn't my crew. I was just kind of tagging along and met a lot of people, and I still see those people like I'll see them at shows. But it was just something where I'm like, I don't want to wait on you. I don't want to be staying in a hotel room with you.
That's why I got my own room this weekend.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've done that plenty of times, and it's just something where it's like, I want to do what I want to do. And even now, like, it's me and my wife, and then a buddy from college, and then his good buddy from law school, and we're all in a room, and I like to take it easy. I like to lay down and sleep and rest all day, because we're so busy. But everybody else is like, let's go, and you're like, okay, I'll go. But it's exhausting, and so it's one of those things where you got to find your happy medium. You got to know when to stop and just be like, all right, I'm gonna go to bed, or I gotta go take a nap. Like, this is what I'm gonna do. You can go do whatever you want, and it's fine, and everybody respects that and stuff like that. But it's traveling and seeing shows. I'll be the first to say I'm extremely stubborn in what I wanted. I mean, just in all facets of life, I'm just a stubborn person, and I try to work on those. I don't know this is a podcast about my feelings, but it's something where it's like, all right, I gotta let go. And then when you let go and you do what other people want to do, it's like, oh, this is really fun. Like last night, we got in just a tad late because we've been sitting in front of Kuroda.
Yeah.
And I want the perfect sound. I want all the lights. And our other friends were like, we're in the 10th row on Mike's side. And it's like, okay, let's go down there. Let's check it out. And there was plenty of space.
Ended up being an awesome spot.
And it was awesome. Yeah. It was really cool. I don't get that close very often. It depends on if it's a GA show and it's outside, all GA, then I'll get close. And I go up on the sides. Mm-hmm. And I'll be second row, but I'll be far away from the band, and it's great, and it's really cool to be that close, and you get to really see what Trey's doing. Trey has a lot of arm hair, by the way. Something I've noticed. It's just
these are the things that you get to think about.
And then once I got LASIK, I was I could really see the arm hair.
No, I liked being close last night because I haven't been that close in years.
Yeah.
And you definitely see the show from a more intimate way, and you can see their facial expressions. You can see them looking at each other in the jams and finding out what's going on in the jams. If they do any kind of little funny gag or bit or something, you're just that much more a part of it. Because if I'm further back, I'm kind of gauging their crowd reaction a little bit. I'm squinting. What are they doing up there that's getting everybody's attention?
Right.
It might sound great back there and look awesome with the lights and everything, but I really liked last night feeling like I could see what they were doing in the moment.
From where we were, you could really see what Mike was doing. And you could really see what Fishman was doing too. It was really nice. And then you could see Trey, but you were at a vantage point where you're looking at him and you see the head of the guitar and you see that, but you could see his strumming hand really, really well. I had this vantage point where I was looking down his guitar almost. And when he was using his effects, something I noticed was he was barely touching the strings, but he was using these effects, and it was it was so loud, and it was so such a strong sound, but it was such a soft touch.
Yeah.
And it was such a cool, it was little things like that I noticed that was really, really cool.
Favorite show this tour?
Oh gosh.
Or this year? Top three.
I mean, I would say, I would 100% say LA, for sure, is one of them, for this year. The first night of Deer Creek was really good. The Blaze On jam, that they hit some sort of I don't know if you call it a crescendo or just this chord progression that they'll create out of a jam, and it's happened in other jams too. But it was this is really awesome. This is really awesome. this, you're like in your head, you're like, is this
this
it?
Is it right here?
Is this it? Is this the good stuff? Like this, okay, this is the good stuff. Is this the best? Is this what I like the most? I have such a hard time now with going to all the shows I've gone to ranking them.
Yeah, I get that.
It's like there was aspects of Nashville that I really liked. Nashville was really hot. Like second set, first night in Nashville, first set, second night in Nashville were really, really good. I thought San Francisco was really awesome.
That show Sunday night was
really awesome.
I think might have been the best Phish show I've personally ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like when people go like, Joe, what's your favorite Phish show? What I gravitate towards is Alpine Valley 2003.
Okay.
And December 29th, 2003, second set.
Miami.
The Miami. And that second, and it's just, I think that there's an element of when things are new to you and they happen, like when you haven't been to any Phish shows, and then let's say you go to like 20, and there's like the one that sticks out, and you're like, that was the night. That was the night that everything made sense. That was the night there's like clarity, but there's also like, I don't think it can get better than that, And then when you go back and compare things to like that first experience, then it's like, it's hard to, because when you're young and you have these experiences for the first time. Like for example, like let's say you're in high school and you go to a high school dance and you're a freshman and you're like, this is cool, this is fun, I'm having a good time, but I'm a freshman. And then like sophomore year, you have more friends and you know more people, and you go to a high school dance, and for whatever reason, they play Michael Jackson, and you are having an absolute blast. And then like...
It sounds like you're speaking from experience.
Yeah, 100%. But then like senior year, you're at a dance, and then you're like, I don't know, I felt like I had more fun when I was a sophomore and it was new.
Yeah.
Like I've done this before.
Yeah, the entire experience has a lot to do with it. So Phish playing is one part of the puzzle.
Right.
And then your experience traveling to the city and what's your hotel arrangement and who's the crew that you're with.
Right.
All that has a lot to do with it. So yeah, I've had experiences where I was like, man, like at Dick's, we always go with a big crew.
Right.
And I'm like, I could not even tell you which set was my favorite, but I could tell you certain years or certain days where it was like the crew was perfect.
And we just had so much fun.
And we just had a blast.
And that's you're exactly right. Like there's so many factors into a really good Phish show. It's like, how are you feeling? Are you tired? Have you been up? Were you up really late? Like, did you take the early flight? And did you get a nap today? Like, there are so many things that go into it that dictate your night. And then at the same time, it's like, I think something's awesome. And then the person next to me was like, that was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I remember in 2014, I did Canandaigua, Detroit, and Chicago. And I met this guy, and we ended up traveling together. And he was like, the Sunday night of Randall's Island, second set was some of the best Phish I've ever seen. Wow, cool. Like, I look at the set list and I'm like, I don't know. Like, whatever, okay. And then we go to, and then they played in Detroit. And Detroit was one of those nights where it was like, they just played weird songs. It was just a weird night. But that's the kind, like, I like those shows where they play those songs that are kind of like, say like a bust out night, but they're not jamming. Mm-hmm. And it's like more of like a rock and roll show. And I was like, this is what I want. I want them upstairs, on stage being like, what should we play? Oh, you want to play Camel Walk? Cool. I'm like, yeah, so we haven't played Camel Walk in a while. Let's do that, That kind of show, to me, I like that more for whatever reason. I'm more of a song selection kind of guy when it comes to shows versus what it was like. I listened to like night one of Eugene. We bought a new house, so I'm painting and doing stuff, so I like put on the AirPods and put the show on. And I remember being like looking at the set list and being like, okay, like kind of glad, like not like glad I wasn't there, but like okay, I didn't feel like I.
The FOMO wasn't.
The FOMO
off the charts.
wasn't off the charts. Yeah. And I listened to the show and I'm like, this is rocking. This is great. Like this is like they're killing it right now. You know, and then people were saying that like the second night of like Eugene was better, and I haven't listened to that yet. But like you know, I can listen to the shows and I can be like, I would be having a blast if I was there. Like I know that. Like I know regardless of what they play, I would be having such a fun time. But but everybody's experience is different, and what people like. I mean, people were talking about the third night of Deer Creek, and about how like, and it was just the weirdest second set. Like they were going in and out of all this stuff. It's like, what song are they playing? Yeah. And because they played like a line of, I forget what it was, but they were playing something, and it was like they only played it for like a minute. So does that dictate that you write it down on the set list type thing? And
yeah, I think there's a lot of gray area when that sort of thing happens.
Yeah, and it's like the show notes. It's like those shows where it's like, and those are always regarded, you know, when you read the Phish Almanac. Yeah. And it was like, you know, you see standard sets and all that, and then it's like the one night where it's like there's like 5 paragraphs of like, they did this, they teased this, they went in and out of that, and you're like, oh, that show sounds like really crazy, and it is. But it's like, is that what I like? Or is that what somebody else likes? And it's hard to, you know, but that's what's so awesome about this band.
Exactly. That's half the appeal right there.
You can talk about this band for hours and hours and hours and hours. And when you meet somebody that's like a Phish fan, like, so I went to some, like, gosh, it was a graduation party last year. And I ran into this guy, and he didn't look like a Phish fan necessarily, but like we started talking. He goes, "Oh yeah," and this is right when I was listening to all those 1999 shows. And I'm like, what was it like to be on tour? Like, how is it? You know, like what was different about it? And he goes, I forget. I remember he said this. He said like in the fall tour of 1999, they had this distinct sound every night. It was just like they picked up where they left off. It was leading up to Big Cypress. Because Big Cypress always like it's like everybody talks about Big Cypress and they don't talk about the rest of the year. Yeah. And that's why I was sort of, it was like the Big Cypress podcast came out, and like I was like, man, I've listened to Big Cypress so many times, but you know what, I never listened to like anything else from 99.
Even 12:30.
Right. Right. And it's like everybody talks about the Mike's song from that, and it's like, okay. But he said that, like, he goes, every night you knew could be, like, the greatest show ever. And, like, you know, there was another podcast where they were talking about the summer of 1997 and people that went on tour. And it was like, they didn't care about, like, sometimes they didn't go to the shows. Because they were like, oh, we got to watch the Dogs in the parking lot tonight. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? It was like, from that perspective, it's like, wait, you're on tour in 1997
outside of the venue,
and you're not going into the show, and tickets are available, like
$22 tickets.
You got to be kidding me right now. But that's just, you know, again, that's their experience. Mm-hmm. That's how they want to do things, and it's different from what I'm doing, and it's hard for me to identify with that in particular. But it was. But I told him, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go to all these shows, and he goes, man, I'm super jealous. And he's like, but I love that band, and I wish I could go. I think he's coming to Vegas. I think he was like trying to get Vegas tickets. I really think he was trying to come here, but.
So what I thought we would do is we're going to go see Phish tonight. Uh-huh. It's going to be awesome. Uh-huh. Birthday show. Yeah. We'll see about the theme or whatever. Maybe they won't do a theme. I mean, they probably will, but.
Yeah. We'll might have to try and do a post Halloween remote podcast.
Yes. We'll see what the costume ends up being.
Yeah. Cool. I look forward to it.
All right. Have fun tonight.
All right.
And
you too, buddy.
We'll catch up with you tomorrow.
All right. Happy birthday.
I don't even know where to begin because there's a lot I want to ask you about your experience on Sunday night.
Right.
But, because that was just wild. We'll get to that. But first, what were your takeaways from Friday and Saturday night's concerts?
So Friday night, I'm going to pull up the set list. Friday night was just a standard show when it came to, just the normal Phish show. The song selection I really, really loved. You got Olivia's Pool and Axilla Part 2. That was 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was just awesome, and I think, we mentioned this earlier, how it got to a point on this tour where, like, it doesn't matter what they play. It matters how they're playing. And, I'm historically, like, I'm like a song selection kind of guy. I'm not, if they play a jam during a song, I remember it and I like it, and that's why I'm there. But I'm also like, I'm chasing songs. I want to hear certain songs and I want to be there. And so I thought the Axilla Part 2 was really good. I thought the mics and the Weekapog was really strong. And then I always wanted it this way. I have to go back and listen to that. A lot of people were talking about that and how awesome it was. And so I got to go back and listen to that. But like the second set, like Tweezer into Funky Bitch, into Reba, into Sand was just incredible. And like the walk away. And we got, and the Julius was really good. And the Tweezer Reprise. It was weird. It was like the crowd reaction for Julius was like as if they hadn't played it in like 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was like,
they had just
did you notice that?
It
was, I'm like, huh? Like, it's Julius.
It's only been a week, but
yeah,
that song was like conspicuously absent from a lot of the tour. But they
and like
play
there
it.
were a lot of songs they did. I was waiting for a punch you in the eye.
Me too. Yeah.
And like, they never played it this tour, and so. Like, I know that kind of stuff happens, but, like, I was like, Julius. Like, I've heard Julius so many times that, like, I'm always excited to hear it.
Yeah,
Don't get me
it's
wrong,
a rager.
But yeah, I don't, like, go crazy for it. So.
Yeah, it's a good, like, big, loud, flashy, dancey song.
Yeah. So, it's always, I remember hearing Julius for the first time at my first show. Back in 2000 and being like, what is this? Like, this is good. Like, this. The crowd really likes this.
Uh-huh.
And always being a fan of it, but I thought that was interesting. And so, yeah, I thought Friday night was awesome. Saturday night, as soon as they came out with the Dogs.
Yeah.
I kind of knew that they were going to do the Animal set. And I don't know if you and I had talked about that on Friday afternoon, but that, I remembered hearing that they had always wanted to do like an Animal set. And so to hear certain things like to get a good Gaiuti, like I love Gaiuti. And then like from then on and the rest of that first set, like Gaiuti, Big Black Furry Creature from Mars, Shaggy Dog, Dog-Faced Boy, The Sloth, into Llama. Mm-hmm. Like a segue into Llama, and then I Am the Walrus was just like... Yeah,
that was huge.
It was awesome. Second set, I didn't know, Piper, the red worm, redworm.
There were a few that were kind of a stretch, especially considering that they were, there was still plenty of like perfectly fine options.
Well, and what like I'm looking at it now, at like Farmhouse.
That one threw me a little bit.
Cluster flies. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But there were a couple of tunes that they didn't play. Do you know? And somebody mentioned it to me the other day, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, like that would have been a perfect opportunity to bust out Dog Log.
Right. That was one. I felt like there were a couple of others that were like very notable, big. Would have been a big bust out, and they just never. Yeah. Came to fruition, and it was just interesting. But man, the Harpua,
yeah.
I think that was my fourth Harpua, and that one I think was probably my favorite. That one had the most like energy behind it.
Yeah, it was clearly pretty important to like pay attention to that one.
Right.
And I was dying when Trey was what had me rolling laughing. And I thought it was hysterical.
Yeah.
I leaned over to Mark and I said, our buddy Mark, and I said, Joe has got to be losing his mind right now because of all the math talk and hypotenuse and hexagons and stuff.
Right. Well, and the funny thing is like, I'm 100% following along with exactly everything he's saying. Yeah. And it was like, you know, the circle of radius 1, and then you like, you cut that off, and then you take that, and you take a circle, and it really is just it's a massive, like, what they're doing is a calculus problem, and it's like stuff that you do, and it's like it's Calc 3 stuff that they were doing.
Did it all check out as a math teacher?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, but it was eloquently written, you know, and eloquently said. When I say those things, I talk in the simplest words as possible to explain something in math. And Trey was like, you know, he used talking about the distance as the square root of, I forget exactly what he said, but he was talking about using the Pythagorean theorem to show the distance between 2 points. But the way he said it was like the square root of the sum of squares, you know, and was using like eloquent, what's the word? Like vibrant verbiage, you know, where I'm sitting there like talking in like as I'm talking to like a fifth grader. You know, that's how when I'm teaching people math, like I try to display it as the simplest way possible, so that anybody in the room can understand. And he was speaking to like the math teacher / poet, you know, right. And it was great. It was awesome. I definitely want to go back and listen to those. I haven't had time this week to do so.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's talk about Halloween. So
yeah. So, well, the story starts on like the first night because it all came down to, you know, you made it, the floor was kind of a mess. Mm-hmm. And on the first night, they were just letting people in. Like, you know, I remember I'm standing in line to get my wife a drink, and I'm by the doors, and they were literally just handing people wristbands. And it was this shady operation, and you're like, come on. Like, there's no, you know, tickets are cheap. Like, no, you know, there's plenty of space. But you got down to the floor because they just scanned your ticket, and they were like, all right, yeah, here's a wristband.
Yeah.
And, you know, it happened to you. And, like, I just knew, I'm like, the floor was really crowded. We had a good spot on the floor on the first night. The second night, two of our buddies went in and got the early entry wristbands. And it was the four of us. And it was totally fine. But we were close. We were probably, like, in the fifth row in front of Mike. Like, we had really good seats. And then the next day, it's like, you know, and because, you know, Julia, my wife, she's short. She has a hard time seeing the stage when we're at the back of the floor. That's where I like to usually stand. And so she's like, can we please go back up front? And I'm like, sure, that's fine. Like, you know, I'll go up there. And so we tried to get in, and we got in line, I want to say, on Saturday night. I saw you and Mark and everybody else, because you were like, oh, this line's way too long. And that was the line you just get on the floor. And by the time we got there, we were like halfway back on the side on the rail. And it was like, if you didn't like guard your space, like somebody was going to take it.
Yeah.
And it was just so busy. And, you know, we had heard that, like, they oversold the floor. They sold too many tickets. And it was just a mess. It was an absolute mess. And so this brings us to Sunday. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, all right, I just want to make sure that we get in and get a good spot for the whole group. Because we had a big group. We had, like, 8 people on the floor on Sunday. And so it was me and 4 other people in the group that we went down to go get the early entry wristband. Now, are you familiar with how the wristband works?
I mean, vaguely, but why don't you clarify?
Yeah, so it used to be, and I never did this, and so this is the first time that I ever got an early entry wristband. And so what it was is like people used to camp out all night and like pay people to stand in line for like the show on the following day. And you would just find somebody on the internet. You're like, you need to stand in line at this point, get in line, and then I'll relieve you 30 minutes before the door opens. And so, everybody up there was like, everyone that stands in line and tries to get up close was really upset. And like, eventually it got to the band. And so the band decided to do a lottery system that like, if you are in line by a certain point, usually by like 3:30, then you can get a wristband. You get in line, you get a numbered wristband, and it's usually about like 300 to 400-ish wristbands or so from my understanding. And then you come back at like 5:30, and then they bring you in, you like go through security, you like get your ticket scanned, all that good stuff. And then you get your tickets scanned and you walk in and you get in this big parking lot. And then they call out one of the numbers, and then that's the beginning of the line.
Right.
And so when we rolled up, people were like yelling at each other. It was not a pleasant moment. We're like, where does this line start? What's going on? People were like, I don't know. Apparently there was like a number system because they're only giving away 250 wristbands. And so they, at the parking lot of MGM where that was, they like Rick, the guy who runs the security or whatever, he then got on the megaphone and was like, please be calm. Everyone that's in here will get a wristband. And so we're like, okay, cool. And it was like, people were they wanted to get front in line. And I'm like standing at the back and I'm like, I really don't care. I just want to get in. I want to make sure that I'm in the door at a reasonable time to avoid the craziness of the last 2 nights of just standing in line and having, I just want a decent spot. I'm not trying to get on the rail.
Yeah. Well,
we get back at 5:30 and my number was 803. So the numbers went, I think it was like 431 to 817. And my number was 803 and they called my number. And I'm like,
effectively making you number one.
That made me number one. I was the first person in line. And I'm like, you can't be serious. And I look at everybody. I'm like, what do I do? Like, I've never done this before. And they're like, you go get in line and you get to be front center. And so then I end up I get up in line and I cannot believe that I am the first person in line. Cannot believe this. And you called me at that point. And I'm like, you have no idea what just happened. And like, I can't believe it.
I thought you were up in the room getting your costume on. So I'm like, hey man, how's the costume going? And you're like, dude, I am first in line.
I didn't have time to put my costume on. And I'm really regretting it now because in theory I did have time, but it would have screwed up my whole system, and I was already super anxious and I got to get back down. It was kind of a mess just getting the wristband. And so we get in and I'm dead center. And the people around me, they were like, I don't know what you look, you don't look very familiar. And so I was like, yeah, this is my first time. I never do early entry or anything like that. I never try and get close. And they were like, and I told them the story, and everyone was so happy because they were like, we like the lottery system because it gives people like you the opportunity to be front row, dead center when you never thought you would ever get that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to put in the work, even though still getting the early entry wristband is a lot of work. It's one of those things that you just don't realize, it's like you can do this, but I don't want to spend my afternoon waiting in line with all these people. But the crazy part was that people would sit down and their friends, people in their crew who didn't have early entry wristbands, come down and sit with them, and they were kicking them out. It was insane. Yeah, they're like, hey man, we're bros, but sorry, you don't have an early entry wristband. You can't sit here. You got to find your own place to sit. Go find somewhere else. Sorry. We need our space. And it was like, I'm like watching this happen. And I just could not believe what I was witnessing. I mean, I can believe it, but like, you know, you hear these stories of like what it's like down in those first couple of rows. It's like, I'm always like, oh God, I don't want any part of that. I don't want the confrontation. It's not how I want to operate. Like, that's not how I want to spend my time. Like, if people are going to stand near me, that's, you know, and it happened at the Forum where like these couple guys like stood in front of us and they were like talking. And it's like, come on, fellas, like, you know, that's not cool. But at the same time, it's like, I get why people are like that, but it's just a foreign concept to me. And I'm just not that confrontational when it comes to being at a concert like that and approaching people like that. So, but it was wild, man. I mean, it was just, and then I'm at the show. I mean, and this is like, we were front row at a Tab show one time in Vail. This was like, I'm on the rail. It was literally, I felt like I was the only person at the concert. Literally. Because the only people I could see was, you know, Paige, Trey, John, and Mike. And it was so wild. And the stage really isn't that big. And I forget how short of a guy Trey is. And Fishman is really short, you know, when you're right there. And so, gosh, I mean, you watch the webcast and I'm right there. You know, when you watch those first few things and you see those photos on the internet, I think like Live for Live Music, I'm like on like their Facebook, I'm on their like Instagram posts. And it's crazy. It's insane. It's so wild. And then, gosh, when they did that a cappella song of, you know, I am in Miami I am in Miami or whatever it is. I mean,
yeah, I saw the picture you took of that moment. It was like, it just looked like.
And Trey is just staring at me. Like, it's so wild. And I'm looking at these guys and I feel like I'm making eye contact with them, but I'm like, they're probably looking at somebody else. But the crew that didn't sit there that I was with, they were like, dude, Trey was like looking at you. And I'm like, was he though? Like, I just don't know. And they were like, yes, he was. And so one of the things was, it was during Get More Down. So to segue into the actual Halloween set, which I thought was really, really fun and cool. You know, it's kind of what I expected that they were going to do. I really wanted an album, and I know you did too, but gosh, it was so funny. It was so great.
Yeah.
Because you realize they had been writing these songs for months. And once Get More Down came on, it was a really, really weird intro that was like, you know, really like just off. It was just really weird.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go into that Fishman, that sound clip that he would do, the one where he's laughing, like the
yeah,
you know, that thing. And when they did that, and when they broke into that, I was crying. I was laughing so hard because, and they were laughing too. And like, to me, I felt like I like locked eyes with Trey, and he could see, I had a mask on, but he could see like my eyes, and I was like belly laughing like so hard. And I tried to be, I'm like, I hope I'm not like making noise and they can hear me, like that I'm laughing. Like, I don't know these things. And there were like a lot of like weird things about being in the front row that I was like very like self-conscious of. It was like, oh, should I be dancing? Like, I'm on the webcast, like the guy's like cameras like staring right at me. Like, it was just weird. But I definitely felt that Trey saw me laughing and was like, all right, yeah, good. We got somebody at least. And he thought, it was like this crazy, crazy moment where he and I were like, he's like, this is hilarious, isn't it? Like, this is really funny, isn't it? I really liked the howling. I thought that was the funk level was really raised during that. And yeah, it was awesome. I just had so much fun just being witness to all of that. It was a new thing. I wonder if they'll keep this concept going in the future.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
I think the concept of them doing an album of somebody else might be gone.
Might be done.
You know, and as much as I hate to say it, I just think that, you know, these guys, they like writing music so much that's all they do, is they sit around and they create. But I think we all know that it's them just sitting in a room, talking to each other, laughing, like we see in that most recent documentary. And it's like, this is where these ideas come from. They're just saying dumb, stupid things, and they're like, "Oh, wouldn't it be funny if we did this?" And then they're like, "Wait, we should do that," you know. And that, I think, is what is so great about this band. And that, you know, they would rather create their own music and laugh about it than learn all of Purple Rain. You know, I'm sure that they're like, I think we could do that, but we are living in such a cool, special time to be able to witness this. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's like, do you sit down and consider this one of the best years of Phish? Yeah. Can you legitimately say that? And I think it's up there as one of the best years. And
absolutely.
The fact that I was able to see so many shows and to be a part of it and to have good seats and to be front row at this concert was like, it's like, okay, now what? You know what? You know, I'm gonna keep going, but like, could it get better? Like, could it continue? Could this path continue? And so, you know, we're not doing New Year's Eve, but we are going to go to Mexico, and so we're really excited for that.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for spending some more time with me talking about that Halloween experience. It's pretty incredible that you got
absolutely
right up in the center. Front row center. You know, how many times does that happen?
Well, I should probably go buy. I should go buy a Powerball ticket because I was play those numbers. So great chatting with you, man. I always love sitting here chatting music with you, and you know, glad that we're back on the airwaves. And, you know, look forward to doing this again.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, man. Hope to see you again soon.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, it's weird. I won't be seeing you this weekend. I've seen you like every weekend.
We've got to hang out a
2
lot.
Months.
We've got to hang out a lot this year.
It's been great. So yeah, let's be in touch and you know, enjoy your holiday season.
Likewise.
And,
happy early birthday.
Man. Oh, thank you. Yes, and you happy birthday as well.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, Joe.
Buddy.
Thanks, man.
Sounds good, man. Absolutely. Take care.